everyone, my name is Evan and I like to make stop-motion dinosaurs and monsters. And during this video today, we're getting Godzilla Minus One ready for some nuclear blasting fun today, I do say. On the return of Godzilla Minus One, there's a lot of spike work to be done. A set of big nuclear ones, then some smaller blue ones. And then once all those are done, we'll have some restoration fun. But the topic of the day is Godzilla Minus One's ending, I do say. Godzilla Minus One has now finally released on Netflix, and it has exploded in popularity. Pun intended. It's a film that both fans and critics can agree with that it is a masterpiece. Taking us back to the horror elements of the original, Godzilla is a true force of nature, seeking his revenge on humanity for inciting his mutated creation. There is a ton of action, carnage, tension, and heart in the film. That all leads us to the climactic ending. But what exactly happened? We'll take a closer look at the ending of Godzilla Minus One and how it's more than likely hinting at a sequel. There's a lot to rise from the depths here, so it kinda goes without saying there will be kaiju-sized spoilers ahead. So if you haven't watched it yet and do care about spoilers, you better turn back now. But for those that remain, let's go deeper into the ending of Godzilla Minus One. Godzilla Minus One harks back to the 1954 original film. It's dark and Godzilla is a real threat, and Japan must unite in order to defeat this titanic beast. The movie starts out in March 1945, mere months before the end of World War II. At the beginning of the film, our lead, Koichi Shikishima, is seen landing on Odo Island for repairs on his plane. However, the engineers take a look and find nothing wrong with it, because as it turns out, Koichi is a kamikaze pilot, whose one mission is to fly into enemy ships and destroy them, sacrificing himself in the process. But his nerves got the better of him and he decided he wanted to live, in despite of the government and his culture trying to tell him what his purpose is. And on the island, he comes across Godzilla. However, looking a bit different. This one is unmutated and looks more like a dinosaur and is much smaller, but still deadly nonetheless. One of the engineers, Susaku, orders him to get to his plane and blow the creature up in order to save the rest. But once again, his nerves got the better of him, and he witnessed all the inhabitants of the island eaten alive by the monster, and or worse. Yeet. All except one survivor, Susaku, who will become very important later. Although upon returning home to find a recently firebombed Tokyo, people don't exactly open him with welcome arms. Instead, they shun him, calling him a coward, and blaming him for all the casualties in the war. "If you just did your job, my family would still be here," one of the characters states. His failure combined with his traumatic experience during the war haunts him to his very core. When he sleeps, he returns back to that island to witness his failures all over again, seeing Godzilla tear through the engineers. When Godzilla returns to Japan in his newly mutated form, following a 1946 nuclear bomb test, it kills its only closest friend, Noriko, and thousands of others by blasting its atomic breath at the heart of the city. Koichi, now plagued with guilt and anguish, finds a new purpose in life, and that is to die and take Godzilla with him. So Kinji hatches up a plan that is unlike anything ever before seen in a Godzilla film. They plan on lowering the water's buoyancy, sinking Godzilla to a depth of 1,500 meters, in hopes that the pressure will crush the creature. However, if it doesn't work, they do have a plan B, just like me. To rise the monster back to the surface using balloons at such a speed that Godzilla will be killed by the explosive decompression. They manage to lure the kaiju to the area of attack, then they activate the device, which creates bubbles, lowering the water's buoyancy. This is very similar to how some people drown in rough waters. Those foamy, bubbled up waves make it very difficult to swim in, leading to them sinking to the bottom. So when they activate the device, Godzilla sinks down right to the bottom of the ocean. However, Godzilla begins to tug at the cables. The plan didn't work. The king of the monsters is still alive and thrashing. So they commence Plan B and start immediately rising him to the surface as fast as possible. And if you've seen what happens to deep sea creatures that are quickly brought to the surface, it's usually pretty extremely gruesome. They manage to force Godzilla up to 800 meters, but then he breaks free and it stays put, avoiding the rapid decompression. When all hope is seemingly lost, a fleet of tugboats arrives to the rescue and manage to help pull Godzilla back to the surface. His skin then begins to start expanding from all the pressure. With his cells breaking down, he rides around in pain. But Koichi, who felt like the plan wouldn't work, recruited Susaku, the engineer from Odo Island, to repair a broken down Shinden fighter. And I've noticed some people are kind of questioning whether or not this was a real plane, and yes, it was during, well, World War II. They had a lot of strange experimental planes going on, and I have a book on this stuff actually, and I believe this plane is actually in one of them. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked on plane stuff. They load this plane full of explosives so they can fly it directly into Godzilla's mouth, blowing it up from the inside, taking his own life in the process. And when Godzilla started charging up his atomic breath again, pointing right at the civilians assisting the mission, Koichi took his fighter and flew it directly into Godzilla's mouth, blowing it up from the inside. The burst from the explosion blew Godzilla's skull wide open, and the atomic breath begins to burst from the holes in his body caused by the depressurization, destroying the body that remained. But just when you think Koichi has sacrificed himself to destroy the monster, we find out that he ejected from the plane last minute, nearly escaping his doom, and now he is finally able to live with himself, now that his war is finally over. He returns to Tokyo, where it turns out Noriko is still alive, recovered from the wreckage with some injuries and radiation sickness from the blast. And Koichi can finally now live in peace, for the time being, because the final shot reveals the mutilated corpse of Godzilla faintly glowing, and has slowly already begun to regenerate. Just as the humans thought they were safe, the threat of another attack looms up ahead. The movie is rich with allegories in regarding to Japan's place in the war. The main character is someone who doesn't want to die, despite living in a culture that has taught him it's cowardly to bail on a suicide mission, and would cause great disrespect to his family and his companions that died in the war. During World War II, many Japanese soldiers were forced to give their lives, even if it was abundantly clear that there was no hope of victory. Shikishima was one of these soldiers, who was set to give his life for a cause that was all but already lost. But when faced with a threat as great as Godzilla, when you've lived through traumatic experiences, you can become desperate. He was planning to die in his battle against Godzilla, but Susaku, the man that blamed him for all those deaths of the engineers on Odo Island, had come to terms on what they were facing up against, and ordered him to live. Realizing that uniting and putting aside your differences, that they could all work together to defeat this beast of war. The kamikaze fighters that the Japanese used weren't equipped with ejector seats. You were expected to die for your country, with no possible way of honorably returning. However, the Shinden plane did have ejector seats, which gave Koichi the opportunity to save himself. So here, I think it's safe to say Godzilla is a metaphor for trauma. After his first attack, all that people could think about was when he will be back, what he's capable of, and how he will kill again. If all you do is think about it, that fear and terror will leave you debilitated. But yet, even with all this considered, Godzilla Minus One is still about hope, coming together as a community to overcome overwhelming odds. And they managed to take Godzilla down, leaving a world where they can rebuild and start anew. Now, in terms of a sequel, will there be one? Well, if the final shot of the movie has anything to say about it, the answer is absolutely, and I personally would really love to see a sequel to this movie because the first one was just great. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be one because you see Godzilla's corpse regenerating and regrowing, with that iconic Godzilla music queuing back up, implying that this won't be the last time we see this version of the King of the Monsters. And seeing how it's done so well critically and at the box office, a sequel I'm sure is practically guaranteed. Although, what would happen in the sequel? Will Godzilla Minus One fight another monster? Like Anguirus or King Ghidorah, perhaps? Or will it be another solo Godzilla film? Let me know what you would like to see as a sequel for a Godzilla Minus One movie in the comment section down below. And I have tons of more Godzilla content to come, so be sure to smash that like button as hard as kaiju, share with your monster-loving friends so we can grow this claymation Godzilla community, and subscribe if you're new so you don't miss a video or daily short. And I just want you all to know that your support is highly appreciated, because there is a monstrous amount of work that goes into these projects, and I think this restoration was a good example. As odd as it may sound, Godzilla spikes are generally one of the hardest things about these projects, and I've spent about probably 2, almost 3 weeks making exact replicas for each main spike on Godzilla Minus One, so this has been quite the task, and I'm gonna be taking a slight spike break, at least production-wise. And if you really enjoyed this video and haven't already seen the Shin Godzilla series, I suggest you go check that out. Because there I dive into a few different theories how Shin Godzilla could possibly be connected to Godzilla Minus One, but that's, well, slightly different content, or film theory in this case. I'll just briefly mention it seems very odd how both of them seem to share, well, very similar traits. Now, as far as the next project goes, we still have one more Godzilla to restore, which is my 1954 original one. However, I think we're gonna take a slight break because, well, I'm really looking forward to doing some test animations with this new setup for Godzilla Minus One. So I'm happy to say nuclear testing will soon be underway. And before I wrap things up into the glamour shots, I just want to, well, emphasize once again how much work this restoration project was. I've made approximately 70 odd spikes, each one having their own exact replica. So that took a ton of work, and there's literally probably almost 2 or 3 days of footage that went completely unfilmed for this project, just because this video would have dragged on far too long. So your support is greatly appreciated, so thank you very much, everyone. You're the reason I keep working very hard on YouTube. Anyways, before I get too carried away, here are your before and after shots and some glamour shots along the way. Hope you enjoy them, I do say. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end of the video. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the content, comment below what you think, share with your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if any. And anyway, that's enough from me. Till next time, take it easy.